Hi, I'm Rach from Ella Yarns. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. I'm making today's video in response to a comment from Says22 who asked me to make a video about some of the places that I like to buy yarn from that are accessible here in Australia. When you're first getting into crochet or knitting, it can be a little bit hard to know where to start, so I'm going to share some of the places where I love to shop, as well as some tips and tricks for what to look for if you are new to the world of buying yarn. So if you're brand new to crochet or knitting, then I suggest trying to shop in person, at least initially. And the reason for that is that I find yarn choice can actually be a really personal preference thing. It's hard to know what you're going to like to work with unless you've actually felt the yarn yourself. I have been guilty of giving up on crochet projects halfway through because I found the yarn so horrible to work with. So when you visit a store in person, you get the chance to actually feel the yarn, see if you like the feel of it on your hands. This is particularly important if you're wanting to make a wearable. So for example, some people really love wool. It's a beautiful natural fibre, lovely and warm, but for some people they can find it really scratchy. So it is important to try that out in person, especially if you have any sensory issues. The other reason I suggest going in person if you are new to crochet is because it's often a good idea to test out the stretchiness or springiness of a yarn. So you can just kind of pull the yarn between your two fingers and see if it's very stiff or if there's a little bit of give to it. And the reason you want to check that is because if you are new to crochet, then you generally want to go for yarns that have a bit of stretch to them. Very stiff yarns can be hard to work with if you're new, especially if your tension is a little bit tight. If you are brand new, I would also avoid any yarns that are overly fluffy. Anything that is too dark, the darker your stitch and the fluffier the yarn, the harder it is to see the parts of your stitch. So definitely stay away from some of those novelty yarns like eyelash yarn, chenille yarn, that type of thing, until you've got a little bit more experience under your belt. The other really great thing about shopping in person is that you can try out different colour combinations. It's hard to know sometimes how a colour is actually going to look in person. It can be a good way to spark some ideas, and you might end up with some colour combinations that you wouldn't have thought of. Okay, so in-person stores. Now, if you can afford it, then definitely I'd suggest the best place to shop for yarn is at your local yarn store. Now, obviously what local yarn stores you have is going to depend on where you live, but I'll put up on the screen some of my favourite local yarn stores here in Melbourne. There are lots of upsides to shopping at local yarn stores. It's a great way to support small local independent businesses. They tend to stock a really wide range of very high quality yarns. In my experience, they often have a lot of hand-dyed yarns, which can come in some really beautiful colours. The staff also tend to be really knowledgeable, which is great, especially if you're starting out. So I definitely make sure that if you do shop at a local yarn store, you ask for their help about what kind of yarn might be best suited to your project. The main downside to shopping at local yarn stores is just that they tend to be more expensive. I think this is a combination of just the costs of running a small brick and mortar store, but also in my experience they tend to cater towards yarn enthusiasts, so they tend to stock some of those higher end, more luxury yarns. Something else to be aware of if you stop at local yarn stores or at yarn markets, some of the higher quality yarns tend to come in what's called a hank. It sort of looks like this. Now, the thing to know about hanks is that you can't actually work straight from them. If you do, they'll get completely tangled and be impossible to work with. What you need to do is to wind them into a ball first. If you happen to have a Swift and a yarn ball winder, then you can do that yourself. There are also some great hacks for how to do it if you don't have a yarn ball winder, but it's also useful to know that a lot of local yarn stores will actually offer a ball winding service, which means you can ask them to wind it into a ball for you before you leave the store. But if your local yarn store isn't quite within your budget, then another great option are the big box stores. So the two main craft focused ones here in Australia are Spotlight and Lincraft. I can't talk as knowledgeably about Lincraft. The one closest to me closed down a few years ago and I just haven't shopped there in quite a long time. But if you do like to shop at Lincraft, then let me know down in the comments and share experiences with the rest of the viewers. And then there's Spotlight. Now, Spotlight can be a slightly depressing place to shop in my experience, but they do have a very large range of yarns, including some great affordable options. So I'll call out a couple of brands that I have some familiarity with. Abbey Road is their in-store brand, and I've had kind of mixed experiences, I would say, with Abbey Road. I used their Kung Fu cotton to make this daisy granny square tote bag, and I found it really hard to work with. Very splitty, and I got really frustrated with it. And then when I wet blocked the squares, the colours ran as well. So this is definitely not a yarn that I would recommend. But on the other hand, their Wind Cries Merino yarn, which is a merino and baby alpaca blend, is probably one of my all-time favorite yarns. It's light, it's airy, it's easy to work with. I just absolutely love it. I've done a separate review of this yarn on my channel, which I'll link down below. Another decent brand that Spotlight stocks is Lion Brand yarns. So Lion Brand is an American yarn company, and typically I find they're a pretty safe bet. I've never been overly disappointed with any yarn that I've got from Lion Brand. I'm currently using a few of their yarns to make blankets. I'm making a mix and match blanket with their Colour Theory yarn. The idea behind this yarn is that all the colours in the range are meant to be compatible with each other, so you can kind of mix and match without having to put as much thought into what's going to go together. In my experience, not all the colours actually look great together, but they are nice shades, and I have been enjoying working with this yarn. It's a little bit inconsistent in its width, so I feel like it doesn't have amazing stitch definition, but for an acrylic yarn it's really soft and nice to work with. Another Lion Brand yarn I really like is Wool Ease, and also Wool Ease Thick and Quick, which is kind of their more chunky version. I'm using this one to make a winter blanket at the moment, and it is a really great yarn. I've also enjoyed working with the Mandala Ombre yarn. It's nice, soft and squishy and easily works up. And I haven't actually tried it personally, but I know that their Heartland yarn is very popular. So two of the more affordable yarns in Spotlight's range are Simcoe and Four Seasons. I've done a separate yarn review where I did a kind of head-to-head battle between the acrylic DK ranges for both Simcoe and Four Seasons. I don't love working with Simcoe. It's quite a slippery, hard to use yarn. And I've had kind of mixed experiences with Four Seasons. Their acrylic is not the softest, although apparently it does soften up a little bit after washing, but I do actually quite like their wool and cotton blends. Spotlight also carries a range of good local Australian yarn brands like Passions and Clickheaton. Important thing to note about Spotlight is that they do sales a lot, sometimes 50% off yarns, sometimes just on some ranges, sometimes on all yarn. So I generally find it's a good idea to wait for a sale before buying from Spotlight. Typically I find you don't need to wait more than a month before the yarn you're looking for will be on sale. So the other big box options include Kmart and Big W. Kmart's not a great place to buy yarn. Their range is very limited. They just stock their &Co kind of in-house brand yarn, which is pretty cheap but not the best quality. Big W actually can have some hidden gems in their yarn aisle, which is usually hidden right at the back of the store. And they do stock some decent brands like Patterns. I don't like their main, I'm not sure if it's an in-house brand or just their main affordable range, but it's called Carnival, and I find it really scratchy and horrible to work with. It can be quite tempting with the price, but it's just not worth it in my opinion. So once you've been crocheting for a little bit and you have learned what kind of yarn fibers you like, what you're looking for in a yarn, then shopping online can open up a whole lot more options. So I'll share some of my favourite places to buy yarn online. So the first is Bendigo Woolen Mills. Now Bendigo Woolen Mills does actually have an in-person store if you happen to be in Bendigo, but for most people, myself included, you're going to be buying from them online. They don't have a huge selection, they just have their own yarns, and they specialise in natural fibres, wool unsurprisingly, but they also do some cotton and cotton blends as well. The great thing about Bendigo Woolen Mills is just that they are very high quality yarns for a pretty reasonable price. They're very good value for money for what you get. If you're a fan of wool, then they're definitely a great option, but as I mentioned earlier, wool can be quite divisive in terms of whether or not you like the feel of it, so it's good to know whether you're a fan of wool before you order some wool from Bendigo Woolen Mills. The other really great thing about them is that you can ask them to send you a shade card, and this is just a little card that includes little samples of each of their yarns, which is really great for getting a feel for the yarn, but also looking at all the different colours in person before you place your order online. So I've just recently come out with a new tweed range and I absolutely love it. It's just this really rustic, wintry kind of vibe woolen yarn. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the prices at Bendigo Woolen Mills is that many of their yarns come in these very large 200 gram balls, which is much larger than most yarn. Most yarn comes in either 50 or 100 gram balls of yarn. So just keep that in mind when you're comparing prices, that generally you're getting quite a lot more yarn for your money when you're ordering from Bendigo Woolen Mills. Okay, so the next online store that I was going to talk about is Hobbii, and that's because it is my current obsession and one of my favourite places to buy yarn from. But This morning I got the heartbreaking news that Hobbii is no longer shipping their yarn to Australia, which is such a shame because I have just loved every single yarn that I've tried from Hobbii. They have some really fun, interesting yarns that are really different to anything else that you can get here in Australia. So it is such a shame that they're no longer going to be shipping here after June. But I'm very seriously looking into the idea of freight forwarding to see if I can still get my hand on some of my favourite yarns from there. So another option, especially if you're looking for some more affordable yarns, is Ice Yarns. Now, I have mixed feelings about Ice Yarns. So it's a Turkish company. They have a huge selection and their yarns are very, very cheap. Their website used to be horrific. It was almost unusable, but I see that they've recently just upgraded their website and at first glance it looks a lot more user-friendly. A lot of the Ice Yarns come in bulk, so you need to buy a large quantity. But if you are needing to buy in bulk, then it does work out very cheap. The shipping costs are quite high from Turkey and they do charge shipping by weight, so it can quickly add up. So just keep that in mind while you're browsing because you might get a little bit of sticker shock when you see the final shipping price. In my experience though, the yarn itself is so much cheaper than what you can get here that even with the steep shipping costs, it often ends up cheaper overall. So the main reason I have kind of mixed feelings about Ice Yarns is because I haven't been overly thrilled with the quality of the yarn that I've got from Ice Yarns. As an example, this is one of the yarns that I got from Ice Yarns. This is a acrylic yarn and it's okay, but I found that it's a little bit inconsistent in size. It's not the softest acrylic that I've ever used and it just doesn't feel great quality. So I keep that in mind when shopping from Ice Yarns, but if you need a lot of yarn very cheaply, then it could be a good option. So a couple of other places to buy yarn online that I haven't used personally but that I'm aware of include OzYarn and also Craft Online. Craft Online in particular could be a good option if you're trying to track down a US yarn. If you tend to watch American crochet YouTubers, you'll probably come across some yarns that aren't available here. And Craft Online, I find, quite often stocks those yarns that aren't sold in stores here in Australia. Another really great option is a website called Feel Good Yarns. This website is run by a female small business owner that lives right here in the same suburb that I live in Melbourne. And it's a really great option if you're concerned about the sustainability and ethical origins of the yarn that you're buying. Feel Good Yarns only partners with yarn brands that are very transparent about their animal welfare standards and environmental impacts. So they're a really great option if you want to feel good about the yarn that you're buying. They stock some really beautiful ranges. Hedgehog Fibers is one that's been on my wish list for a really long time and I'm hoping to pick some up from Feel Good Yarns once I've got the perfect project for it. So that's a quick summary of some of my favourite and not so favourite places to buy yarn. I really hope that you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm hoping to do another video soon that talks a little bit about what to look for when you're buying yarn if you're new to the world of crochet. So things like the pros and cons of different fibre types, what to keep in mind when trying to pick the right kind of yarn for your project. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out. But in the meantime, happy crafting! Thanks so much for watching this video. I really hope that you found it useful. And if you made it to this point in the video, I'm so grateful. You are my people and I am so glad that you found your way here. Also, if you're really wanting to master the art of crochet, be sure to check out my Learn How to Crochet kit in my YouTube storefront. So this kit is a little bit different from others that you'll find in the market. I've designed this kit more like a Learn How to Crochet masterclass in a box. And by that I mean that I've specifically designed the patterns so that they are ideal for beginners, cover all of the major stitches and techniques that you'll want to master when you're starting out. What this means is that by the end of the kit, you'll be able to tackle basically any beginner, advanced beginner, and even some intermediate crochet projects. So in this kit, you'll learn things like how to keep your edges straight, how to manage your tension, how to seam, and even how to do some color work. Each pattern builds on the skills that you learned in the previous pattern so that your confidence and your skill set will grow as you work through the kit. And by the end of the kit, you'll have some great little items that you can use around your house. The kit is also designed to teach you how to read a crochet pattern because I've included detailed long form written instructions alongside short form notation in the format that crochet patterns are typically written, along with detailed step-by-step tutorials. It also includes troubleshooting support and other handy tips and tricks. I've also designed the projects to expose you to different types of fibers, different styles of crochet, and different hook sizes, so you can start to learn what you really enjoy to crochet with. So make sure you go and check it out and let me know what you think. If you want to say thanks for any tutorial that you found useful, you can buy me a coffee, which is linked down in the description below. Thank you so much for crocheting with me today, and happy crafting!